I teach in a television studio and in a gallery full of loads of equipment, and I have all sorts of challenges, and there's two key problems which I'm going to talk about in this little video. And the reason I've made a video is because my solution to the problems was to make videos, and therefore it seemed appropriate to use this form. So here we are in the television studio, a space where I spend most of my life teaching. And if I'm not in here, I'm upstairs in the gallery teaching a whole range of different technical equipment. And teaching technical equipment can be quite challenging in general, but as long as you've got repeat equipment, so in this case, for example, this camera pedestal in the studio, I've got 4 of these, it's not too bad in teaching because it means you can split the group into smaller groups, each working hands-on the camera. I can teach a particular aspect as they all gather around, and then they can have a go at exploring that knowledge, and then I can give another demonstration. So it's well suited to that type of teaching. But the problem number one that I experience is that the students often forget what they've learned. Even though it could have been a really good lesson, they often will forget, and that results in me having to teach this over and over again and constantly having to remind people. So that's my problem number one. The second problem is up here in the TV gallery. It's very difficult to teach up here, and the reason for that is because as you look along these areas where people sit, in each case they're sitting in front of a different piece of equipment which needs very different knowledge, very different skills, each of which needs a bit of practice. And so in order to be able to actually do an exercise where we make the most simple of programs, we need to be in a position where I've got someone sat at each piece of equipment and they understand how to use it. Now that is a challenge because in a way you're teaching one person at a time, and yet you've got a group. Just to give you a sense of how difficult it is, let me just talk you through. So up this end, for example, over here is where we have the auto cue. This is the script that the presenter would read, and I need to teach the software of how they type into it, and also over here there's some controls which enable you to move the text as the person speaks, and also if you need to start again, how to reset it. So there's that item. And then over here we have a very complicated vision mixing desk, and to be able to teach this takes some time, and it's a bit like playing a piano where you actually have to use very specific fingers for very specific buttons. So this is quite challenging. And then the person sitting here is the director, and the director needs to understand how to use their talk back so they can talk to anyone in the studio or gallery. They definitely need to understand these screens and the whole principle of directing. So that in itself is a great deal of teaching. And over here we have the PA, the production assistant, who is making the program finish on time and constantly giving the director some timings. And there's all sorts of different types of clock here, 3 different types, each of which needs some teaching. Here, I wouldn't use this in the first session, but here is a very complicated bit of software for doing graphics. Over here, we've got the ability to do lighting, and we also can play in clips, pre-recorded video into the program from here. And so that is relatively complicated. And finally, in this room, over here is the racking where we can actually change the brightnesses of each camera to make sure that they're constantly matching each other. So you can see that this is definitely a challenge. So what's the answer? Well, the answer for me in this last 12 months has been to produce a large number of training videos where the students can watch these on Blackboard and learn outside of the classroom. So this is a form of the flipped classroom where you take some of the learning out from your normal lecture and let the students do it in advance. And doing it in advance is definitely the way. So I make them, like all lecturers encourage students to do a reading before lecture, I get them to watch specific videos. And then during the lesson, they actually then repeat the same content. But because they have already seen the video, their learning is much more effective. Now they're getting their hands-on to put into place the learning that they had managed to achieve by watching the video. And I have noticed a significant difference in my first year teaching, where students seem to get it. They seem to actually understand what I'm saying, even though I'm talking about some quite complex technical equipment. And to some extent, they are remembering it far better than they had done previously. And the great thing about these training videos, of course, is that if they've forgotten something, they can watch it again and again and again. They can even have their phone with them when they're out on location, and they can look at Blackboard and watch the video if they need a quick revision. So for me, this has been really effective. I think it's been effective. I'm just about to show you some feedback from the students. There are about 50 people in the class, and this is what was said about it. In fact, I'm going to go to the negative points first. These are all the positive. And there were 2 negative points about using these videos. Watched the videos, but they weren't suited to my learning style. I felt the training videos for editing were hard to see on my laptop screen. And everyone else is making a point that they found them helpful. And the sorts of points, like that top one, Tim's videos really helped and prepared me for the lecture, and they were easy to follow and brief enough to go into the lecture confident. And there's other comments to do with the particular type of learner they were, and they found reading quite difficult to learn from, but by being so visual, it was more effective for them. So that for me has been a striking new way of doing things, and I did make about 40 videos last summer. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, that's an awful lot of work, but you know, the one you just watched took me an hour, and there was no one else in the room. I did it all. Obviously, this is what I do, and so I should be able to do it in an hour. But you know what I mean? It's not necessarily that difficult. And some of the ones I've done, I got students to help film me, and it's all one shot. It's literally one shot. So that was it, fully edited and everything. But it doesn't need to be. It could be filmed on an iPhone. And if you're showing detail, you just take the camera close to it. You just have to have it quite close. In fact, I'm going to work with Simon Starr next week to make a little training video on how to use a phone to make training videos for staff, because I think there is potential. Now, this is the result of a very specific problem in my particular, very specific world, but I have a feeling that there would be potential, certainly for other technical teachers, but also for people teaching pure theory. I just feel this idea of being able to prepare the students in advance by taking out normal content from your normal session, they watch that in advance, and then they can come to the real session and you can do more exciting things with them because you flipped out that content. Anyway, that's my little bit.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, any questions for Tim? Yes, Joe.
I thought that was really interesting, and I'm hoping to do a similar kind of thing next year, especially with 3D animation. I was just wondering how long your videos were, because we sat through a few long ones doing PDF, and they were extremely painful. So I'd like to know how long a successful.
Well, this was a trial for me, so I did the whole range. So I did some very short ones, and I think that's probably the answer, that you're not going to do anything too long. But some of mine go up to sort of 10-15 minutes, but it's very thorough. It's going through everything you need to know in a camera. And there's even one which is 30 minutes long. Now you may think that that's too long, but it's where they actually see me editing material that they then are going to edit themselves. So you actually see an editor edit, and it's long and boring, but it actually is quite useful. So, but my advice, if you were going to do it, is to keep it short and snappy, and lots of little ones.
Johnny?
Thank you very much for that. And just to echo what Joe said, the PGCAP is pushing flipped classroom models quite heavily, so there'll be quite a few more of them popping up, and certainly our Germans are we're exploring it as well. Have you made use of the analytics in Blackboard to see how far students get through them? Because that's what I did a little screencast. It was quite fun to see where the average person got to. Okay.
I haven't done that. No, I mean that's the great thing about Blackboard is that you can do all those sorts of things. I think it's also a very good platform for you to put these videos up because you could do it elsewhere. You could do it on YouTube or whatever. But being able to see these anywhere, but not everyone in the world can see them, it's very good. So sometimes the quality of the video would be something I would not put out there, but I don't mind for this because really what I'm saying is the most important bit. It doesn't matter if the camera happens to be slightly wavy. So I think Blackboard's good for that.
You can also see which students have looked at the video or haven't. So you can, if you can, at the time, be bothered, you could actually go to a session knowing that A and B and C haven't seen it.
Yeah, and I found in terms of strategy of teaching, if you're going to do this, you've got to really foreground it to the student that this is important. So every week, for the first 3 or 4 weeks, I would bring the timetable up and say, these are the screens you were meant to do for today, who did them?
Yeah.
And I got honest answers, and it got better and better as the weeks went by.
I was just going to ask how many students did kind of the first week or so?
The first week, a handful, but the second week, they began to realise it was actually quite helpful. And by the end, it was the majority were watching them in advance because they realised in this subject area that if they didn't watch them, they weren't going to get anywhere because it was so technical.
One more very quick question, if you don't mind. Because one thing that's come from the PG cap is what do you do with the student who hasn't watched them? It's okay, you're saying the majority do, but there's always going to be 2 or 3. Wonder what the strategy was in the session?
Well, the thing is although I'm using the term flipped classroom, I am not removing the content from the session, I'm repeating it. I'm repeating it. But the thing is, by repeating it, I feel their learning was much more effective because it wasn't the first time they're hearing it and they weren't having to take it all in. And then, of course, they could watch it again. So my theory is that what happens is that the first year, you're putting the groundwork in. The second year, you may be in a more advanced position where the flipped classroom is then happening because you're able to do creative work because they've got the technical. They've remembered it. That's my sort of philosophy of it.
So, how do you think you're going to build upon these videos? Have you thought about, in terms of years to come, apart from obviously update the new technology?
I'm not sure. No, I haven't thought about that. I've thought about the fact that it could be something that happens more across our school because it's clearly really effective.
Yeah.
My way of building on it would be that in the first year you do see different videos to the second year.
Okay.
In fact, in the second year you can see all the first year ones, but you can now see some more advanced ones. And in the third year, again, there are some more advanced ones. That's my way of building on it. So there is progression through the 3 years.
What's the reaction? Because I'm going to do the same thing for editing software because it just sucks up so much of my time, and it just kills the class because everybody's struggling through something exactly the same. But again, I'm going to repeat the content. What's the reaction from the students who have watched that and then you're basically effectively going through the same thing in the classroom? They'll go, why are we doing this? We've already looked at this.
Yeah, you'd think they might do that, but they didn't do that at all.
Right,
No. And I was... In the video on editing, I used the material that they then edit.
Right.
I think it helped them greatly because they then sort of knew what to do with that particular material. Then they could transfer those skills on to new material in the future.
So you take all the rushes, you use the rushes in the video, then you give the rushes to the students. They repeat what they see in the video.
Except I do teach it again in front of them briefly.
With the
same material. So they do always get the lesson twice from me in the first year. I mean, you might want to experiment with that, but I think repetition is not a bad thing. I just don't want to have to repeat in class time. That's the point.
I mean, one of the ways in which it might be advanced would be to get third year students to make second year to make first year, because that's asking them to take on board how they understood the teaching of the concept and pass it on. And as we all know, that sometimes that's the best way. When you're trying to explain something to somebody, the preparation you do for that, it could well be that could form part of their assessment rather than making a TV show. For example, an alternative could be how do you prepare or skill up first year for going through what you've gone through? I don't know if that's flipped classroom, it's probably flip and help classroom, but I don't know. Yes, Andy.
I think it's fantastic, Tim. Just from my own personal experience, it seems to be this is the way to teach practical, because if I'm trying to learn a bit of software at home, first of all, I can't just do it in abstract, I need a project. So I'm trying to do a project which you've got in the lessons. And what do I do if I want to learn a bit of software? I go on YouTube and see if anyone's got a tutorial for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way to do it, isn't it? It's really good.
It's the modern way.
But in terms of, somebody raised it already, Tim, it is quite a large chunk of time needs to be invested in order to get these done. And so, I'd be thinking kind of structurally or strategically, if we were moving in that direction, then that has to be recognised not as invisible time, but time that we've spent enabling the students, if you see what I mean. So
I thought well, there's a way of sharing some of the resources, particularly in media art and design. It's Graves doing a very similar thing. And some of the tools and the softwares, they're almost, I'm not saying that we teach it in the same way that you teach it, but as a refresher, you guys had access to create video, that kind of thing, and actually sharing that kind of best practice would be interesting.
That's a question I want to ask. Isn't there a one? I mean, you've answered it in many ways, but I'm still thinking that there's some particular power in the fact that you're in the video, that the students are talking. It might well be somebody who's teaching it very well, but there seems to be something really significant that Tim's in the video that the students are involved in. And I just wanted to ask you how you would identify, the main advantages of you being in this video, because there are loads of training videos out there.
Yeah, there are. That's an interesting question. I think it helps build a closer relationship with the students, actually, because they get to know my personality through it. Because, it's not the slickest video, let's get that clear. And I'm able to teach it in my particular way as well. So I'm not having to mould my lecturing to fit someone else's video. I can make it exactly how I want it. So they're the two things for me. The fact that the students get to know me better because they keep watching me all the time.
What's your
Some subliminal messages like, I like my coffee black. Let's see if we can see
attend lectures, please. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dan. That was really excellent.